If you don't already know, Hayao Miyazaki is releasing his last film, How Do You Live, in July of 2023. Honestly, that might be my most anticipated movie of the year. If you don't know who Hayao Miyazaki is, he is the founder of the Japanese animation company Studio Ghibli. Some people pronounce it Ghibli, but I'm gonna pronounce it Ghibli. Studio Ghibli is a film company I adore, and Hayao Miyazaki might be my favorite animation director of all time. So, I'm gonna rank every Studio Ghibli movie. Keep in mind, these are just my dumb opinions, you don't have to agree with them.
I don't know what's happening, I don't know what's happening, I don't know what is, what the fuck is going on?
Earwig and the Witch is awful. The 3D animation is gross, the characters are infuriating, the comedy is painful, the story is uninteresting, and the music isn't good. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna talk about. If you want to watch somebody rip this movie to shreds, watch the Karsten Rundquist video. I'd much rather talk about the good Studio Ghibli movies. Tales from Earthsea is very uninteresting. I haven't read the original Earthsea books, but I was still able to see how lifeless of a movie this was. None of the characters were interesting. The characters' motivations were strange and stupid. Even the world this movie created was uninteresting, and usually one of my favorite parts of Studio Ghibli movies is the world, but this movie just did a terrible job at getting me invested in the dragons and the city. Seriously, how do you make a movie about dragons boring? Dragons are the best. The emotional tones of this movie didn't work for me at all, and the ending was extremely underwhelming. To be fair, there was some things in this movie I liked. The first scene of the movie was really good and really intense. The dragons all had beautiful designs, and I appreciate this movie for going for a more laid-back fantasy approach rather than an action fantasy approach. But other than that, this movie was dull. Sorry, but Ocean Waves is really dull. All the characters are uninteresting, and the female love interest is extremely unlikable. And the ending of this movie is awful. I'm not gonna spoil it just in case, but it's genuinely made me angry. One thing I do like about this movie is the emphasis on nostalgia. It made the movie a little bit more charming, and I'm aware that this movie is a TV movie, so obviously they had a small budget, but I still think they should have tried a little harder. If you like this movie, that's awesome, but personally, I will forget about this movie very quickly.
I'm just a little person.
The Secret World of Arrietty feels like a modern take on a laid-back classic Studio Ghibli movie like Kiki or Totoro. Arrietty was a great, charming character, the boy was a great and nice character, but the relationship between the boy and Arrietty seemed unnatural and unbelievable. But on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, the families of both the boy and Arrietty felt so real. However, the villain was bad and felt unnecessary. The animation was beautiful, but that's a given for Studio Ghibli. The tiny world this movie created was so interesting and creative to me. It reminded me of Mario Party DS. I felt the second half of this movie wasn't nearly as good as the first half. The second half wasn't bad, but it was a bit underwhelming, and the ending felt abrupt and rushed to me. I know it sounds like I'm tearing this movie apart, but I actually think it's decent. I just had some issues with it. My Neighbors the Yamadas is really charming and cute. I don't have a lot to say about this movie. I loved the comic book animation style, and I also loved the comedy. The characters were all extremely charming and easy to like. This movie is directed by Isao Takahata, who has made some of my favorite Ghibli movies of all time. Don't worry, I'll get to those later. In fact, I'll get to one of them very shortly. Oh yeah, My Neighbors the Yamadas is great, I would recommend watching it. Well, Pom Poko is interesting. First, I loved the characters, I loved the comedy, and I loved the weird nightmare festival scene. I also loved the plot of this movie because of the heavy influences on Japanese mythology. I love the Tanuki suit in the Mario games, so watching a movie based around Tanukis was really interesting. I also really loved the ending of the movie. Now the bad stuff. The mockumentary style of this movie didn't work for me, and it was really distracting. And holy shit, the scene where the raccoons inflated their ball sacks to beat people was hilarious, but only ironically.
A little kissy. Yeah. A little kiss.
But overall, pretty good movie. Ponyo is the Little Mermaid but Miyazaki'd. The characters are all likable and charming, and the relationship between Ponyo and Sasuke is really adorable. The animation is amazing as usual. The music by Joe Hisashi is amazing as usual. My only problem is, I thought this movie was really weird and not in a good way. I know that might seem like a bad criticism because all Studio Ghibli movies are weird, but those movies are weird in a more surreal, artsy, fantasy way, but this movie is weird because of the extremely messy plot and the character interactions being so bizarre. Still liked it though, and I would still recommend watching it.
I think I'll donate $1 million to the local orphanage. When pigs fly.
Porco Rosso is action-packed, funny, but also charming like other Ghibli movies. The animation is amazing, the story is amazing, all the characters are great and hilarious, especially Porco Rosso and Fio, and the ending climax to this movie is suspenseful yet hilarious at the same time. My only problems are the romance between Porco and Fio was pretty weird, and I wish this movie did more creative stuff with the pig curse. But other than that, great movie.
People only used to fly in balloons.
The Wind Rises was Hayao Miyazaki's last film, until it was announced that he was making one more movie. Seriously, Miyazaki lied to us all and I couldn't be happier. Jiro is an incredibly well-written main character. The romance between Jiro and Nahoko is very charming and cute. The animation and visuals are beautiful and immersive as usual. Personally, my favorite part of this movie is the writing. It's a biopic about a man who wants nothing more than to follow his dreams of being a plane inventor, even though we as the audience members know that his plane inventing would lead to Pearl Harbor. But this movie doesn't focus on the political aspects, because Jiro doesn't care about politics. The only thing Jiro cares about is making planes. That story is just so beautiful to me. Sadly, the first half of this movie was pretty uninteresting to me, but the second half of this movie was when I really started to get invested. Also, the ending is incredibly beautiful and bittersweet. Overall, not one of the most engaging Ghibli movies, but it's still great. I highly recommend watching it if you haven't already. The Cat Returns is just adorable. Unlike The Wind Rises, I don't have a lot to say. I loved Haru, the Baron, the Fat Cat, and the King. I loved the comedy, I loved the imagery, and I loved the idea of a spin-off movie based on the stories made by the main character in Whisper of the Heart. Overall, great and cute movie. Castle in the Sky has epic robots. This movie has beautiful art and animation. This movie is insanely creative with its visuals and story. The pirate characters are hilarious, the villain is dark and mysterious. Joe Hisashi kills it with the music, and the opening scene is an amazing hook. I only have one problem, and it's sadly a pretty major one. The two main characters are pretty uninteresting to me. But other than that, this movie is very nice and whimsical, but also very suspenseful and dark.
LOL, so school sucks. Grow a damn pair of balls.
I know From Up on Poppy Hill is super cheesy and super cliche, but it's just too charming for me to hate. This movie is directed by Hayao Miyazaki's son, Goro Miyazaki, who also directed Tales from Earthsea and Earwig and the Witch. Even though Goro has directed my two least favorite Ghibli movies, I don't think he's a bad director. It's evident by From Up on Poppy Hill that Goro loves slice-of-life anime, and he's really good at making those. But when he isn't making those and is just trying to imitate what his father or what other animation studios are doing, his movies can be very messy. Anyways, the main characters are great, the side characters are memorable, the animation is beautiful, and even though the writing of this movie is super cheesy and cliche, I still ended up getting invested in the movie. My only problem is the music was super emotionally manipulative, but other than that, I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie.
If you're driving a lonely road, you're as good as dead.
For Miyazaki's second movie, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is really damn impressive. The animation in this movie is absolutely incredible. The giant scope and post-apocalyptic setting make this movie very visually pleasing. The tone is so dark and serious. Nausicaa is a great character who's really emotional but also really badass. Asbos is a great, serious, and mysterious character. And the two villains are also pretty good. I also loved the idea of huge bugs being the main conflict of the movie. The music is great, and the climax of this movie is absolutely incredible. My only problem is, I wish the first third of this movie was a lot more interesting and more fleshed out. The movie just kinda drops you into this fantasy world rather than build into it like other Ghibli movies, which makes it a bit jarring at first. But other than that, amazing movie.
Oh, look at that over there!
What is it, darling?
I believe they're lesbians!
When Marnie was there is gay and epic. Anna is an incredible character, and I really sympathized with her loneliness. The bond that Anna has with Marnie is so magical and charming. The story of this movie is amazing. I love that there is a mystery around Anna's dreams and what they mean. The animation is absolutely gorgeous and beautiful as usual. And of course, this movie is incredibly emotional and touching. My only problem with this movie was the ending reveal. I'm not going to spoil it, so all I'll say is I thought it was underwhelming. Anyways, this is an amazing movie.
He's gonna take you back to the past.
Only Yesterday is just so charming and sweet. I love the movie's themes about self-realization and growing up. The animation in this movie was beautiful and also brilliant. Whenever this movie shows present-day Teiko, the animation is really detailed, but whenever this movie shows Teiko reminiscing on her past, the animation is really hazy and sketchy. That animation choice is just so brilliant to me. My only problem with this movie is some of the character interactions seemed a bit pointless, but other than that, this movie is amazing. Miyazaki, you mad lad. Howl's Moving Castle is awesome. The animation is some of Ghibli's most beautiful. The characters are all incredible. Joe Hisashi's soundtrack is beautiful. And I loved the more complicated story and themes in this movie compared to other Ghibli movies. My only problems are, I thought the tone shifted way too much in this movie, which is a huge reason why so many people don't understand or get confused by this movie, which is understandable. And that scene where the main character and the queen are climbing up the stairs was so pointless and stupid, sorry. But other than that, I love this movie. Who knew that a steampunk anti-war film could be so charming and whimsical? Well, that's just Hayao Miyazaki in a nutshell, isn't it?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a grizzly bear. Grizzly bear.
Holy shit, I had such a Ratatouille moment watching My Neighbor Totoro. The animation in this movie is beautiful, the characters are all insanely lovable, the creatures are also insanely lovable.
Hello? Hi.
The music is whimsical, and this movie takes me back to the simpler times, man. The two sisters in this movie are the only ones who can see Totoro and the other creatures, and usually I hate this kid's movie cliche, but this movie without a doubt does this cliche the best. Because none of the parents or side characters act negatively towards the girls like in other movies, because Miyazaki knows that kids' imaginations are a huge part of childhood and growing up. Insert Ratatouille moment. And the whimsical tone of the first two-thirds is a contrast to the amazing last third. This movie is just so charming, and really brought back some great memories.
Hey, stop being so fucking lazy. All you do is eat and, snort lines? What is that?
Kiki's delivery service is so whimsical and charming, and I've said this a lot in this video already. I loved the animation, I loved the characters, especially Gigi, but excluding Tombo. This movie is also really hilarious, which definitely surprised me. But, same with Totoro, my favorite part about this movie was the relatability. Watching Kiki get burnt out from her job, try to find meaning in her life, and get lost in the world was so relatable to me. My only problem was I thought the climax was a little unnecessary, but other than that, this movie is amazing and really means a lot to me. Princess Mononoke is without a doubt Ghibli's second most gruesome movie. I'll get to the first later. The animation is some of the best in all of Ghibli. It's absolutely gorgeous. The fight scenes are incredibly intense and suspenseful. The music is beautiful and really immersed me in this fantasy forest setting. This movie also has a great sense of humor. I love Irontown, I love the characters, the opening and climax are breathtaking. My favorite character is without a doubt Lady Eboshi. She's such a complex and awesome character. I also love the environmental message of this movie and how it's portrayed. My only problem is Princess Mononoke could be a bit annoying sometimes, but that's a nitpick. This movie is incredible.
If this is where the monarchy is headed, count it out!
The Tale of the Princess Kaguya is Isao Takahata's magnum opus. The characters are all incredible and memorable. Kaguya is such a great character, and I really felt her depression, fear, anger, and happiness throughout the movie. The animation is so unique for Ghibli, but also beautiful. The music is absolutely incredible and beautiful. The best part about this movie is obviously the emotional stuff. This movie can be funny, dark, sad, and even make you angry. Isao Takahata is truly a master at communicating human emotions through animation. The beginning of this movie is so heartwarming and charming. The ending of this movie is so sad and bittersweet. And of course, the scene of the princess angrily running out of the house with that sketchy animation style is so incredible and is one of my favorite scenes in all of Ghibli. Overall, this movie is incredible, and I highly recommend everyone watch it.
Shit! Oh my god.
Even though I said The Tale of the Princess Kaguya is Isao Takahata's magnum opus, it isn't my favorite movie that he directed. Grave of the Fireflies is the darkest, saddest, and #1 most gruesome Ghibli movie. It's very hard to get me to cry when watching a movie. Sorry, but if you want to make me cry, you have to show me something really, really, really heartbreaking. And this movie did it. This is one of the most brutal movies I've ever seen. This movie is not only an amazing anti-war film, but also an amazing movie about growing up. The main character is amazing. Although he can be arrogant and ignorant at times, he's just a kid trying his best to get through a hopeless scenario. Although this movie is extremely sad, I would recommend that everyone watch this movie at least once.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, just like me so small. Your vision doesn't
Whisper of the Heart is one of the most charming and relatable movies I have ever seen. I loved watching the main character grow up, find meaning in her life, fall in love, make friends, get burnt out, and write stories. The romance is amazing, the characters are amazing, and of course the animation is amazing. I love the scene where the main character and her love interest start singing Country Roads in a shop, and the shop owners get home and start singing along too. Although the scene is really cheesy, I couldn't help but smile while watching it. This movie is incredible. Yup, Spirited Away is one of the most creative and original movies ever made. The animation is some of Ghibli's best and most beautiful. This has the best music in all of Ghibli. But the best part about this movie is the characters. They are all amazing. Chihiro starts off the movie as an annoying brat, but that makes her character arc in the second half all the more special. Haku and No Face are both incredibly mysterious yet charming characters. Yubaba is a super cruel and sadistic character. Bo and Kamaji are pretty weird but also charming characters. And Lin is such an amazing complex character. This movie is incredibly charming, hilarious, and terrifying, all in the best ways possible. This is without a doubt Miyazaki's best movie, and it's a movie I would recommend everyone watch. So yeah, that is my Studio Ghibli ranking. I can't wait to watch How Do You Live later this year. Yeah, this video took a while to make, sorry about that. Bye bye.